Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. You've chosen a very exciting day to join us on the show because I'm here with Karen Appleton, the Senior Vice President of Industries at Box and the founder of Box.org. Karen, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'd love to start out chatting about your team's early days at Box. Why did you trade in an office, as we were just saying, to a startup?
There are a lot of reasons for that. I had worked at a few large organizations. And when I moved to Silicon Valley in about 1999, I got the bug for sure. And that was just as the bubble was bursting, and it was a bit of a scary time. So I worked for a bunch of large organizations, knowing fully that the learnings and the kind of the opportunities that I took advantage of would help me when I was able to go to a startup. I didn't necessarily imagine that startup would, at the time, have only raised about $1 million and be run by a 21-year-old. So that was surprising, but we've come quite a long way since then.
In a past interview reflecting on that, you shared that you were the first female employee and the first non-technical hire. You've seen almost everything. What surprised you the most?
I think when I look back, the most surprising thing to me is how lucky we got that the world shifted in a way that supported everything we were trying to achieve, and how often we were right. Particularly Aaron, just his incredible vision and strategy was just right on point and converged so nicely with the industry trends at large. So I think that was kind of the most shocking thing. For one reason or another, earlier today, I was looking back to see if I could find an old email, and an email popped up from 2007 that was talking about the Enterprise 2.0 conference. It wasn't even called cloud when I started here. So we've really come a long way.
Was that what attracted you during the early days to join the big vision?
It definitely was. I had a dream, my own personal dream, which actually probably shared by more people in Silicon Valley than maybe anywhere else on the planet, which is to join a company at its inception and to take it all the way through an IPO process. And quite obviously at this point in time, that's what has happened. And yeah, that has fed kind of my passion around working for a startup. I don't know whether I'd ever join a company so early again, but I wouldn't trade this experience for the world.
When you reflect, is there one or two memories that really stick out from the early days?
Oh, more than one and more than two, I can promise you. I cherish the memory of our fundraising around the period of time that we were raising our B round. Markets were turbulent. The financial crisis was hitting. It was pretty ugly in Silicon Valley when you needed to raise money, and it just coincided with the we were also pivoting. So we were leaving behind the consumer side and really chasing wholeheartedly the enterprise side. And so we didn't have yet a huge, robust story to tell. We had a dream and a vision and a lot of goals and some data to support, why we were doing what we were doing. But Aaron and I were out, trying to raise money, and it was scary. It was scary, and it was fun, and it was energizing, and it was challenging, and there were just lots of amazing things that happened out of that. And then the other memory that I like to point to is when we got our first big deal. Because when I started, I was running business development, and when we got our first big notable deal, it was with Dell, and it was just almost, we just couldn't even believe that we with 10 or 12 employees were going to sign a partnership agreement with Dell. It was just crazy, but it was incredibly exciting and everything else at the same time. So
I think those are the moments where you realize, okay, we are a young startup, but we do have to start implementing some processes so we can make sure that a partnership with a huge corporation like Dell is executed right. How did you approach implementing early processes at Box, but make sure that you weren't stifling the creativity?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And it certainly was hard for us to kind of for example, with that Dell deal, I could walk over to engineering and say, hey guys, this deal's coming up. Let's talk about what we need to do. And, by the end of a, 10-minute conversation, we'd have a plan and we'd just go execute. And, clearly today that would just cause chaos if I, wandered over to one of the engineers and asked him to build something for me. So, in order to kind of mitigate the chaos that could be created, you have to create some processes. I think we've learned along the way how to how to streamline and fast track those things that need to be based on how they align with our corporate objectives, and that actually takes practice. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. I guess I would say it even takes discipline more than practice to make sure that you understand that the decisions you're making have the trade-offs, pros and cons, and do you sign off on or sign up for the trade-offs in order to make the progress that you need? We've had lots of learnings along the way on that front.
Can you share an example of that?
I would say, well, I would probably point to some of the early efforts on our marketing campaigns, and on some of our branding efforts. How do you decide? There's outsourcing and insourcing, and marketing departments go through lots of different shapes and forms as they grow. And I think that we had to come up with a plan for how do you keep things on brand and on message. And what's the process for doing that? And we created a process for that. And, it got to a certain point in time and we realized it was actually slowing things down to the point of not being an effective means. And so we had to then retool that effort. But, there have been many, like I said, many examples of how the growing pains of scaling require the implementation of processes.
And as you've scaled, you're just mentioning how different it is. Now, used to just be 10 of you, and then it's 1,000 people, and it feels different when you look outside, but you still feel like you're at a startup. How have you maintained that?
I think it's because of the way that we've implemented and deployed our core values. Things like fail fast, a very kind of typical mentality in Silicon Valley, but not always easy to deploy. How do you know if you're failing? How do you know what's fast? But those are some of the core beliefs that we execute around, and certainly, as a team, we're aligned around where our goals are and how on track or not we are with those sorts of things. And so I think it really comes down to just kind of the mentality of the leadership and how that rolls down to the people on the teams underneath. So that we encourage everyone to. The other thing I guess I would point to as I think about it is the nature of the product box itself encourages a less hierarchical point of view. So almost anyone can comment at any point in time on an object or a document that's within the box environment, as long as, of course, they are, within that folder. So we get a lot of folks who just chime in, and it could be an intern who's on my team for the summer who's engaged with a marketing effort, and all of a sudden we have new ideas popping up from an intern that get deployed company-wide. So I think some of that creates a flattened environment where everyone feels like they can contribute, and certainly that's the essence of what we're talking about.
Have there ever been any instances where you've had to step in and reevaluate because you feel like that essence has gone away?
I can definitely say as an organization that has happened. On my team, I think it happens often. And sometimes it's just the natural evolution of what your mission and purpose is, right? So, for example, I run the industries team now. It's a reasonably new effort. Year one, we had, we were basically trying to define what it was that we wanted to achieve. What are the most important metrics? What are the most important outputs and objectives? And how will we gauge our success? And as we learned, and we monitored very, very closely so that we could fail fast or get better fast, we took a lot of inputs and we said, okay, great. Now that we can see back and look at what we've done, we know better what we want to do in the future. And so I think that that kind of innovation, even around ongoing projects and ongoing, departments or units of the organization, really help us to stay innovative, stay culturally aware, and hierarchically, as flat as makes sense.
I think it's huge too because it sets an example, especially for new individuals coming in the organization, that just because you've been there from day one doesn't mean it's any different from you. Everyone's failing fast, everyone's experimenting. How did you approach making strategic hires in the early days?
That was always a challenge for us because it's super interesting. I often refer back to a conversation that happened just happenstance about 5 years ago with me. I was walking with two other women, and one woman was taking over a company that was just absolutely failing. And I was like, why are you taking this? She was taking on the CEO role. I was like, why are you doing this? And she was like, you know what? I like to fix super broken things. That's what I like to do. And the other woman was like, wow. She goes, I just like to start things. I like to take an idea and I like to start a company and grow it. And at that point for me, I was like, I'm a builder. I like to take something that's just an idea within an organization and grow it. I don't want to be the founder of a company necessarily, and it doesn't have to be my idea that we're executing against. But I want to take something, figure out strategically how to get it up and running, how to make it successful, and launch it off. That's really what I like to do. So I think that was a kind of a critical learning, and kind of fits back into how we think about hiring people, how we look at them and analyze them. You can put people in different buckets like that, and at different sizes of the organization, you need different skill sets. So someone who comes on board, to run sales of a super small baby startup is going to hit a point where their experience and their history it is only going to take them to a certain level. And then perhaps you need someone who has scaled a company to multiple billions of dollars in sales. So I think we have to, when we look back at those early strategic hires, we had to find people who were very risk tolerant, who had built up some skill sets. And we also had to recognize that they may not be the same person we would hire when we're 1,000 employees or 1,500 employees or a public company. But you kind of bake that in, I think, as you kind of look objectively at the stage and growth of your company.
I think that's critically important because it shows that it has nothing to do with the individual and what you think of them. It's just a different stage of the company and a different stage of experiences.
Right. I have had experiences where everybody makes a wrong hire. Hopefully you get better at it as you go through your career, but it's not easy to hire great people. And when mistakes are made, I think it's incredibly important to be honest about it. Somebody who isn't doing what they should be doing, it often doesn't mean they're bad or wrong or anything. It just means they're probably just in the wrong role. So I think that a frank conversation about that, like, hey, you know what? We love you. We think you're fantastic. We don't think you're right doing what you're doing right now. And oftentimes, of course, that can be a difficult conversation, but I have never had that conversation with someone who didn't end up in a happier, better place with a better fit for them. So I think that fits into the equation as well. You can make mistakes on hiring and it doesn't necessarily have to be a tragedy. Let's do it with dignity, grace, and honor, because you want people in the right place. You want them happy and productive. And just because it doesn't work in one role doesn't mean they're not going to excel in another role.
Is there one thing in your experiences thus far that really stands out to you about hiring that guides how you do it today?
So for me, I need to have a personal connection. I want to have a personal connection. I want to be able, a lot of people will say, could you go out and have dinner with that person? And I don't know necessarily whether I take it quite that far, but I certainly want to be able to have a good foundational relationship. We run fast and furious on our team and almost all the teams here at Box. And so you want to be able to have a really good, solid connection. Trust is critically important. important. And I laugh sometimes because, you hire people after you spend, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours with them, hopefully it's a little longer than that. And, and you're spending all day with them for years and years and years, it's, it definitely, creates a little bit of nervousness when I'm about to extend an offer to somebody, because you want to make sure that it's somebody you enjoy spending the day with. But we've done some really, really good hiring, particularly of late. I have an incredible team. Super proud of them.
That's great to hear. I'd love to shift gears for a couple of minutes to talk about something else you're super proud of, which is Box.org and the impact that your team is making for nonprofits. Can you share that with us?
100%. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. A lot of times reflecting back on, what are my most proud moments at Box. One of them certainly is the launch and the announcement of Box.org. Early on, Erin and I talked about the idea. I think we snagged the name Box.org, somewhere back in 2007 or something like that. And so it was always on our mind. We always talked about it, and I, always sort of, had stuck the flag in the ground, the stake in the ground on wanting to do that someday. And when finally we felt like the time was right, and again, there was a lot of energy for it in Silicon Valley at the time. We really wanted to do it right, and it is actually the way that we created the initiative, the foundation, and the kind of the pillars that we put around it have really informed a lot of our strategy and approach, not only for Box.org, but for some other efforts that we have underway right now. And so we launched it just about 2 years ago. And we launched it with an advisory board of absolutely spectacular nonprofit leaders. We had a bunch of key customers, partners that wanted to go, out and make some noise with us on this launch, most notably the World Bank. And it really also kind of, as we were going through this, helped solidify what the value add is. And really what we're trying to say with Box.org is, there are thousands and thousands of nonprofits out there. Most of the nonprofits are fewer than 6 employees, and they are the most passionate people you're ever going to meet. They are trying to solve huge problems. The World Bank is trying to alleviate poverty. We're just selling enterprise software, They want to alleviate poverty. You know what? We want to help them do that. If we can be there by their side to help them with technology tools that help them to achieve their mission, that's our goal. So our mission is to help nonprofits globally to achieve their mission by providing them with technology tools that help. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it, and that's what we're all about.
And it made so much sense to me. I was watching one of the videos about Box.org, and one of the nonprofit founders was saying, we really need this, because in the moment when you have a lack of communication, it could really be life-changing for someone.
Exactly. And we are hearing that time and time again. A hurricane doesn't strike where the Wi-Fi is great. It strikes, in some of the world's most remote corners. And same with earthquakes and tornadoes. And some of these disasters really require, people to pull together in ways that they've never had to before, particularly if they've never experienced it. In the moment of some sort of a natural disaster, on the ground, troops are deployed instantaneously. And we made a commitment at CGI, Clinton Global Initiative, last year, which we are a member of, to work on a piece of technology that will help exactly that in those situations on the ground in some of the world's worst disasters, to provide a structure, a foundation for deploying information at that time. So, where do people need to go? Which hospitals are still accepting patients? How are people going to move around when the volunteers arrive? What are their instructions, and how do we deploy that information in a super fast, very efficient manner so that everybody is operating, on the same with the same information? And so we've partnered with Team Rubicon and with the IRC and with lots of other Silicon Valley companies, such as Twilio and many others, who are committed to helping to build an application that will serve in those times. And so we are affectionately calling that Impact Cloud internally right now. It's not an official name at the moment, but it's our disaster relief application in partnership with CGI and Team Rubicon and IRC. So that again is, it's pretty transformational. For us, it's how do we take the technology that we have and put it in the hands of people who know how to use it, and this is just happens to be solving, one of the problems that hopefully will keep people safe and get them to safety faster.
And for you personally, in your role within that big mission, what's the most rewarding part? What gets you most excited?
There are so many because I like it when I see small little baby nonprofits who have just a few employees and they're like, we use Box all the time. It saves us so much time and energy, and that's one level of just kind of that just makes you feel good, right? And then there are other sort of levels of gratitude when you hear, Lymphoma Society talking about how they're using it to collect research and to share and disseminate that kind of information. That's a whole different kind of impact that we're having on people, and it even helps us to connect more effectively and efficiently with our customers and partners, around some of the efforts that they have underway. Almost every senior level executive is on a board of some sort, and they all have passions around solving big problems in the world, whether it's diabetes or whether it's, arts and education. And you can connect with Box.org around all of those various problems, and that becomes very rewarding as well. It's a way to connect.
I love that. And I'm glad that you mentioned CGI also, because you shared a great insight there actually when you were talking about Box.org in 2014 and related it to leadership. And it really stood out to me. You said, in order to become a good leader, you have to learn from the people who came before you. Who have you learned from?
Oh, I'm lucky to have a lot of great influences in my life, and I think that we all take from those. I love stories. I love storytelling. I love to pick people's brains about the experiences that they've gone through. I've learned a ton from Aaron. I've learned a ton from Dan, our COO. I've learned a ton just by happenstance sorts of conversations, like, oh my goodness, I'm having this challenge right now. How would you handle that? And just getting people's views. You take that all in, you absorb it, and you kind of, make it fit your style. And, I'm lucky enough at this moment in time to have a team that is extremely senior, with wildly experienced backgrounds. And I think we all learn from each other. So even that has been super fun for me is, what was it like when, you were running, you had a team of 300 people. How did you decide how to do this or that? And you can bring it certainly into the context of what we're all about as a company. We're certainly here at the, if you boil it down, to make enterprise software available to every enterprise in the world. And how do we do that? And how do you take those tactics and approaches and get everybody's kind of sort of point of view and help that out? But more specifically to your question, I have a lot of great leaders in my network. I am very proud to have a network of I'm not friends with every single one of them on a this level basis, but 300 women in the Silicon Valley area that connect and engage either formally or informally on a reasonably regular basis. I think Heidi Roizen is an incredible leader and fantastic business partner. She's at DFJ, and I connect with her on a regular basis. And I think that you just build a network around you of other folks that you can call on a one-off basis or connect with on a regular basis. I've had an executive coach who I think the world of for years and years and years. She can tell by like my mom, she can tell by the sound of my voice when I call her what kind of day I'm having. And I think that all of those things combined help to build kind of the learning circle around all of those things around leadership.
And part of leadership, too, that fits often when you end up calling your friends and your executive coach and that network that you really build around yourself are some steep learning curves that we all face. For you, what experience was the steepest learning curve?
Oh, gosh.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. I had there was someone on my team who had to get had some harsh feedback that we had to figure out. What are we going to do around that? It's exceptionally painful when you hear something about yourself that you didn't already know, and you think you know yourself well, and you think you're doing all the right things, and then you find that there's not that there's someone who thinks that you could be doing something differently or better, and maybe there's not just one person who thinks that, maybe there are a bunch of people that think that, and when you get that, oh, I know, I can tell you, it's hard, right? There is no better way to learn than to go through that, and it sucks, but I think that it's the greatest gift in the world to get really harsh feedback when it's done in a way that enables you to grow. There's nothing better than that. As much as it hurts, as painful as it can be, without those experiences, you really are only getting, half of the value of the information. If you don't have the good and the bad, you really can't grow completely. And so, I hate it, don't get me wrong, but I welcome it, particularly when it's given to you in the spirit of growth and betterment. It's hard, but it's incredibly valuable.
I love that, and I think it's such a great way to wrap up. I'd love to end on this question. We talk a lot about how to give feedback. How do you be radically candid with someone? Because it's always hard to give feedback. But I think sometimes what gets lost in that is you get the feedback, you feel like you were punched in the stomach, and then you have to react to it. If someone listening in right now has gotten a piece of harsh feedback and they're not sure what to do, what's the best way to approach it and, take the next step so you can get the most out of it?
Then you go through stages with it, denial, wanting to throw a rock at them, deny. You go through the stages. I think you need to sit with it for a while. You really need to sit with the information. You need to distill it. You need to come to grips with it. You need to decide whether you're going to embrace it or dismiss it. And I think that there is a lot in that, just sitting with it, just kind of learning to wrap your arms around positive and negative information. You want to balance it. I mean, if it was only the negative stuff that we're getting, you want to just, kind of check it out. It's not about that. It's that how do you turn it around? And the other thing that I find with it is if you confront it, it's almost like a ghost in the closet. If it's in the closet and it's locked in there, you're going to be hesitant to open that door. If you open the door and you just let all of that out and you make it just part of who you are and just honest about it, then all of a sudden it frees you. It doesn't keep you closed up anymore. It frees you. So I think, that is, again, it's hard, but kind of just confronting it, being open to it, and just saying, this isn't what I want or how I want to be or what is important to me. How do I get to that next step? And taking the first step and going forward. It's pretty powerful when you can do that.
I love it, and I love the way that metaphor kind of makes a reality that, hey, if you open up the door, you can actually see what happens. And it's something that anybody right now, because we've all received some type of feedback today, whether it was small or large, can take moving forward. I can't thank you enough for taking us back in your experience and talking about scaling so we can get what life is like in the day of Karen. What's the best way for everyone to stay up to date with you and your team's efforts, but also nonprofits who are interested in Box.org? What can they do?
Absolutely. The Box.org website is chock full of great information. I'm on Twitter at Karen Appleton. We'd love to have people connect and engage with us, and happy to share information via the website if you want to come in and check it out. And if you need some more information, we are happy to help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.